Hello and welcome to the Core Outdoor Speaker Series. I'm your host, Jamie Moy, an adventure journalist based in the West Kootenay region. Once a month, Core produces this webinar to share valuable information with the outdoor rec tech space and to foster connections within the Core community. Today, we're hearing from Ales Jurca, the Vice President of Footwear Research at Volumental in Stockholm, Sweden. Volumental is a global innovation leader in footwear sizing research and technology. Ales holds a master's degree in robotics and biomechanics from Ljubljana University in Slovenia and is currently working on his PhD with the focus on using AI for shoe sizing recommendations. Welcome, Ales. I am thrilled to have you on the speaker series and to hear more about your game-changing research. I'm going to turn this over to Ales, but first, if you have questions, great. Just go ahead and hold those to the end and we'll do a proper Q&A following Ales's presentation. All right, with that, Ales, I'm going to turn the floor over to you. Go ahead and just hit share on your screen and we'll get going.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction. Can you confirm that you can see my screen?
Confirmed.
Perfect. Yeah, welcome to this webinar. I come from Volumental from Sweden, and I'm going to talk about the fit tech for retailers and brands in store and online. And just a quick overview of the topics. I'll give you some background of my studies and my initial work in the footwear industry. I'm going to talk about Volumental and, of course, about the research that we're doing at Volumental. I'm going to talk about the data-driven footwear development and show you some examples of partnerships with brands. And then I'll finish with some information about footwear fit and Q&A at the end. I grew up in a little town in Slovenia, close to the Alps. Growing up, I did a lot of downhill skiing in winters and biking during the summers. And then later, I also started cross-country skiing. For my master's degree, I studied at the University of Ljubljana, robotics and biomechanics. And I was explicitly interested in the ankle flexion at different gait patterns and then simulating those ankle flexions with a robot and trying different types of footwear and measuring how stiff boots or shoes were in the ankle and identifying if they allow the needed movement. And after my studies, I moved to the US and worked as a software developer at SpaceNet, GE SpaceNet. And then when I moved back to Slovenia, the CEO invited me to join Alpina, which is the biggest company in my hometown. They are the biggest footwear brand in the world in the field of cross-country ski boots. So in the beginning, I wasn't really sure if I want to work in an industry which is very traditional, coming from like satellite telecommunication world. But then the CEO showed me a different point of view. He said that, well, it's true that the footwear industry is very traditional, but there's so many opportunities to introduce new technologies and bring this industry into the 21st century. So then I decided to try for a few months, and I stayed for 5 years, which was a very steep learning curve for me, understanding how shoes are being developed, produced. I did a lot of research on cross-country boots and testing with um, top athletes, which obviously was a lot of fun. And during that time, yeah, I even patented some patents on cross-country ski boot. I think this one is very interesting. It was a new binding where the boot is connected to the ski under the ball of the foot. So this was filed in 2002. And last year, Rotafella came out with a new binding specifically designed for skating style. And you will see that it's exactly following the solution we patented more than 20 years ago. And during that time, it was like for my future career, it was really important that we started using foot scanners to scan customers' feet. And the first scanner we used, it was a medical device produced in Canada by Volumental. And with that scanner, we scanned like the first around 1,000 people and designed lasts based on that data. And a very interesting project was designing a new downhill ski boot for kids, where we scanned around 500 kids from the local school. We analyzed the feet, and we realized that kids' feet were significantly, like proportionally much wider in the forefoot compared to adults' feet. But the previous kids' downhill boot was just a like smaller version of the adult boot. And with the new prototype, we made it much wider. Yeah, some colleagues were quite skeptical because it was so different from the previous one. But it was for the first time that we had the actual data about kids' feet. So we produced the first prototype, made some holes into the boot to be able to see the feet inside, went back to the school and did some fit testing, and we confirmed that the new prototype fitted much better than the old one, which really was the aha moment for me, realizing that the whole footwear industry worked like using some old lasts. Nobody knew what data they were designed on, what data was used for grading the lasts. But I saw that there's a huge opportunity to really use the data to improve the fit of footwear. And yeah, these are photos from the first store where we installed the first retail scanners. This was developed together with the University of Ljubljana. This was in 2004, which probably was one of the first stores in the world using a foot scanner to help customers find best fitting shoes. And then like all the main stores in Slovenia used these scanners. I assume we can all agree that finding good fitting shoes is a challenge. Shoe shoppers have to try on several different styles and sizes before they can find a good fitting pair. And the challenge is even bigger when buying shoes online. And e-commerce has solutions for like easy payment, fast delivery, but when it comes to selecting the size, you still have to trust your intuition, and most often order several sizes to try them on at home. And these stats here of size inconsistency and return rates based on fit just prove the challenges of the footwear industry. But these are actually not the biggest challenges of the industry. The biggest challenge is that the footwear industry is still very traditional. Most shoes are still being developed and produced using the same method as decades ago. Many shoe lasts are still designed manually, as you can see in this photo. And when the sample size of the shoe is scaled across the whole size range, they use scaling factors which nobody really knows what data they're based on. And just like decades ago, you still have to try on several styles and sizes before you find a good fitting pair. And at Volumental, we are on a mission to transform the footwear industry. We are a global tech company developing 3D scanning and product recommendation solutions. We apply computer vision and AI in our products. And our biggest focus is making technology simple to use and creating a wow experience for the shoppers. Our vision is to shape a future free from sizes where everybody fits. And we are currently around 75 colleagues tirelessly working towards this vision. Our main office is located in Stockholm in Sweden, and we have offices in China, and we have colleagues on the ground in the US as well. Our foot scanners are currently deployed in over 3,000 stores globally, and our partners have successfully scanned more than 30 million shoppers. And for more than 10 million of these shoppers, we also have data about the specific shoe they purchased. And additionally, our online solution is being used by tens of thousands of shoppers weekly to scan their feet at home using their mobile phones. We also have, I checked this morning, we have 1.2 million scans from Canada, and most of those come from hockey skate stores. And we also have scans from running stores and ski rental stores. And yeah, these are the four main services that we offer to our partners, the in-store scanner and the online scanning, which I'm going to talk about more. The omni-channel solution where we use customers' food data to send personalized messages to the customers. And of course, the footwear research part, which is like my area. And we use the data to help brands create better fitting shoes. We have a large number of enterprise customers with hundreds of scanners in their stores, ranging across various segments like running, hockey, hiking, ski boots, golf, soccer, and so on. And we also work with many R&D teams of brands who use our services to fine-tune the fit of their shoes. These are just a few examples of how the Volumental scanner can be integrated into any type of store format and can fit into any brand's store branding and design vision. All these four examples you see here are from our current enterprise customers with hundreds of stores and very strong, distinct identities. And yeah, the part that I'm most excited about, the research based on this data. So as a researcher, I have the privilege of having access to all the data that is being collected through our technology. Our database of 60 million scans enables us to understand the variety of foot shapes across the world. And in this scientific paper that was published in Nature Scientific Reports, we analyzed 1.2 million scans from North America, Europe, and Asia. From every scan, we extracted the forefoot width, the instep height, and the heel width. And I'm going to talk more about the results of this study. And yeah, the paper has been accessed more than 100,000 times on the Nature website and has been cited by 37 other scientific papers, which gives this research substantial credibility. The paper is open access on the Nature website, and if you haven't seen it yet, I encourage you to access it and look at the main results. In this paper, we very precisely defined how each measurement is extracted from the 3D scan, which I thought was very important because when looking at the previous research, there was no clear definition of how the measurements were extracted, and then it's not possible to compare results of different studies. And it's great to see that some of the recent papers, researchers used our definition of these foot measurements, which then makes it possible to really compare results across different studies. In my view, the most important finding of this paper was that the feet of the same length vary a lot in different dimensions. In this animation, we're looking at North American male feet in the length class 270 millimeters. This is the range of 4-foot widths. So just looking between the 5th and the 95th percentile, the difference between a narrow and a wide foot is 16 millimeters. And this animation demonstrates this large variety. And when I show this animation even to footwear developers, they're amazed by this large variety. And they all agree that just the same shoe cannot fit to all these shoppers. And in the paper, we concluded that to cover 90% of the population, at least 3 widths are required per size. And we can see the same pattern across any measurements. In this case, looking at the instep height, again, the difference between a low instep foot and high instep foot is more than 15 millimeters. And just looking at this animation, it's obvious that the same shoe is quite unlikely to fit everybody. And like in the instep, most of footwear has some kind of adjustment system like laces. So there is some compensation, but still looking at this large variety, probably the same shoe cannot really fit perfectly to every customer. What we were able to demonstrate is also large differences, like significant differences between male and female feet within the same length class. In this chart, we're looking at box plots for the ball girth of the from the US market. So if we, for instance, compare feet in length class 260 millimeters, we can see that the average male ball girth is higher than the 75th percentile of a female ball girth. So if a shoe is designed for an average male foot, it's going to fit to a wide female foot, but you can see that a narrow female foot is very far from the average male foot. So yeah, this obviously demonstrates that shoes should be designed separately for men and women. And it also demonstrates that even within each gender, there's large variety between like the 5th and the 95th percentile. So having multiple widths or multiple fits per style definitely makes sense. And again, looking at the instep height, the difference between men and women is actually even higher. You can see that the average instep height in length class 260 for men is even above the 75th percentile for women. So yeah, the differences there are even larger. Yeah, in this animation, I randomly selected 10,000 female feet and 10,000 male feet in the same size, and then calculated the average female and male foot, and then visualized the differences. So the female foot is green, and the male has red areas, and the red areas demonstrate areas with the largest difference between the average male and female. And you can see that male foot is higher in the instep and also wider. So if men's shoes were designed, or if men's shoes were just depinked versions of female shoes, they would be way too tight in the instep and in the width as well. And the same happens when a women's shoe is designed based on the male last. The difference is that for women, there's too much space in the shoe, which is probably less painful than having a too narrow shoe or too low. That's why, like for many styles, women have to live with that difference. But if the men's shoes were designed based on the women's last, it would be way too narrow, and then it would be even more painful. But again, these differences obviously show that there are significant differences, and shoes should be designed specifically for each gender. This was another interesting study where we compared male feet from Hawaii and other US states. And we saw that in Hawaii, customers have significantly wider feet than other US states. It's not sufficient to study only the standard foot measurements, such as width or instep height. It's crucial to analyze the whole 3D shape. In this animation here, you can observe feet with various toe shapes. And again, this animation clearly demonstrates that the same shoe will not perfectly fit to all these customers. And we are currently working on a new scientific paper where we will cluster all the feet in our database into most common forefoot shapes. And hopefully this will be helpful for footwear brands to design shoes specifically for each cluster, so each type of forefoot shapes, which will further improve the fit of footwear. So not just widths, but also looking at the variety of toe shapes. And yeah, when we were analyzing the toe shape, the forefoot shapes, we saw that there's a large variety in the big toe angle or the hallux valgus angle. So we introduced a new measurement, which is extracted from every scan. So the hallux valgus angle. And here you can see examples from, with hallux valgus angle between -5 degrees, where the big toe is pointing to the medial side, and all the way to 40 degrees, which obviously are medical cases with extreme hallux valgus. And yeah, we published a paper a couple of years ago with ergonomics, specifically on the analysis of the big toe angle. So this is how the angle was extracted from each scan. And these are results of the analysis looking at the same 3 regions. The main takeaways from this study were that in each region, female feet have significantly higher hallux valgus angles compared to male feet. Yeah, and especially in Asia, the difference is even higher. And then you can notice that like the angles in North America and Europe are quite similar, but then customers in Asia, they have significantly higher angles as well. And we were able to show that in Europe and North America, around 25% of female shoppers have the hallux valgus angle higher than 15 degrees, which is already considered as a foot foot issue. But then in the Asian population, that was close to 50% of the population. Yeah, a few examples of partnerships with brands, those that have publicly talked about this, so we can also share it in public events like this. We worked very closely with Lululemon when they developed their first running shoe specifically designed for women's feet. So in this case, in this project, we were looking at women's feet from the North American market. And the shoe, Lululemon received the Launch of the Year award at the Footwear News Achievement Awards, which is also known as the Shoe Oscars. So it was quite visible in the industry. Adidas also used our data when they were developing the Ultra Boost 22. They developed a specific women's last for the first time in the product history, and that was done based on the women's scans from our data set. And yeah, it's great to see that footwear brands are following this trend and developing shoes based on women's feet, and not just creating a smaller version of men's shoes. We also work very closely with On, and yeah, they also recently launched this Cloud Sparks sneaker, which was also designed specifically for female customers using our data. And yeah, in the footwear development process, fit testing is one of the most important steps. And it's important that your fit testers or the brand's fit testers really represent an average customer. And yeah, in this animation here, this is from like one of the footwear brands. These are scans of 2 of their fit testers. And in this radar chart, we can see how each scan compares to the target population, looking at the ball width, ball girth, instep height, instep girth, arch height, and heel width. You can notice that like both feet are very similar in the forefoot, and they are very close to the 50th percentile, so close to the mean measurements across all these measurements in the forefoot. But then in the heel, you can see that they are very different. And the narrow one is at the 10th percentile, which means that 90% of the customers have a wider heel. And the wide foot is above the 80th percentile, which means wider than 80% of the population. So when performing fit tests, the feedback from these 2 fit testers about the fit in the heel area of the shoe will be very skewed by their feet being far from average feet. So it is really important to measure all the fit testers. First of all, making sure that the foot size is the standard sample size that they use in the development process. and then making sure that their feet really represent the core of their customers. And it's great to see that more and more brands are using this technology in the development process, and some of them even requiring it from all their production partners, even those in the Far East, to use the scanners and scan everybody that provides feedback about the fit of the sample shoes first, and also when they when the shoes are in mass production. Yeah, footwear fit. To improve the sizing systems, improve the fit of footwear, and even be able to provide perfect recommendations, it's important to accurately capture data about the fit of shoes. And I assume you've all experienced that even different styles of the same brand don't always fit the same. Or in this case here, even the same style, just like across different seasons, doesn't always fit the same. And many companies have tried measuring the fit of shoes using different approaches, which can be grouped into these two categories. On the left, we can see attempts of measuring measurements like the ball width or ball girth with this device, and the inner shoe length with this device here, or measuring the pressure points on a few points on this plastic foot that is put in the shoe. But the problem with all these approaches is that measuring it just in a few distinct points doesn't really provide the overall like the overall fit of a shoe. The methods on the right try to measure the inner shape, and yeah, in this example, the company used a camera to stick inside the shoe and measure the inner shape. This company was acquired by Amazon in 2015. And then it was never used on their e-commerce site. And then I was very involved in this technology here, using an X-ray device to scan the inner shape of the shoe. There are several problems with these approaches. First of all, it's impossible to simulate a foot inside the shoe while measuring the shoe, but we know that the shoe shape changes significantly when you put it on. And the other issue is that the shape of the 3D shape of a shoe is very different from the 3D shape of the foot. So you're basically comparing apples and pears, and that's why this technology doesn't work. And yeah, we even patented this solution using X-ray more than 10 years ago. Yeah, it sounds logical that you have to measure shoes to be able to understand how it fits, but it took us years to understand that measuring shoes actually doesn't work. So at Volumental, we have a completely different approach. We believe that customers' feet are the most accurate device for measuring shoes. And having hundreds, or in some cases, even thousands of scans of shoppers that have purchased exactly the same style in the same size gives us the possibility to calculate what's the optimal foot shape that fits the specific shoe in a specific size. And that's what is the basis for shoe recommendations. This is a heat map of many shoppers that purchased this style Vomero 14 in size 11, I believe. This looking just at the foot length and foot width. The peak of this heat map is at 276 millimeters in length and 102 millimeters in width. And that's the optimal foot length and width that fits the shoe. And it's interesting then to compare these heat maps across different Vomero styles. And you can see that the center of this heat map changes quite significantly from style to style, which shows that the fit is not consistent across different versions of the style. And this animation, this chart, visualizes just the optimal foot length for each version of the Vomero style. And you can see, like, from version 8 to version 9, there was a significant drop. They obviously changed it the last year. They saw it didn't fit well, so they modified it here. But basically quite inconsistent, and we see that across basically all the brands. In one of the studies, we analyzed women's running shoes in size US 9. We looked at 178 women's styles, and we had close to 30,000 scans of shoppers who bought one of those styles in size US 9 B width. We saw that 249 millimeters was the most common foot length of all the shoppers that purchased size US 9. Each dot here in this chart represents one of the styles, and each column is one of the brands. So even within one brand, you can see that styles vary quite significantly in fit. So yeah, from 246 to 253 millimeters. So 7 millimeters difference, and the size increment between two sizes in the US sizing system is 4.23. So quite inconsistent. And what's even more interesting is the orange areas here in this chart indicate the brand's size charts. So that's how each brand defines size US 9. You can see that even like running brands are not consistent how, like, what they think size 9, like what's the optimal foot length for size 9. But what's really interesting is that each brand is quite far from how their shoes actually fit. So the difference is in some cases even more than 10 millimeters. So obviously size charts don't really help customers find the best fitting shoes. With some brands, we started using smart size charts, which are trained on actual shoppers' feet. So looking at all the foot scans of shoppers that buy this style in a specific size, and then calculating the foot range for each size. And these are updated daily, and these reduce some confusion around sizes. But really, the ultimate solution to take the guesswork out of sizing are size recommendations. Our online shoppers on e-commerce sites that use our feedback technology can scan their feet using their smartphone and then get a size recommendation based on their foot measurement and the information about how that specific shoe fits. And in stores, using scanners, customers get, in the first step, they get style recommendation. So for each style, they see what would be the best size for them in this style. And you can see that, like, for instance, this style was size 10 was recommended. So obviously this style runs small, and like most of them were size 9.5, but this one was, the recommendation was 10 because they fit small. And then this style was recommended in width B because obviously these run a bit wider. So B would be perfect for this customer, and in other styles, the D width would be perfect. And this concludes my presentation. yeah, feel free to reach out to me after this event, or connect with me on LinkedIn. And yeah, happy to answer your questions.
Thanks so much, Ales. That was incredible. I mean, the animations were just so eye-opening. The variety of widths and insteps. It's just like, man, we're so far behind in sizing footwear compared to clothing. I think I might be incorrect there, but it seems like it. All right. Well, I would love to open it up for questions. I've got everybody on mute, so you will just want to go ahead and unmute yourself before you ask your question, but let's hear it. What do you want to know from Alish?
I did have a question um, about the animation that you showed. Did you guys do similar on children on smaller sizes? Because in my mind, toddler, I have to believe toddler width and insteps and length are just got to be all over the place, just based on me having 4 kids and putting shoes on them. So
Yeah, we have, I think at this point, around 2.5 million scans of kids' feet. And yeah, we see the same pattern there as well. And what's like even more obvious now that we have so many scans of kids' feet compared to what we found out at Alpina, the like 3D shape of kids' feet is very different from adults' feet. They are proportionally much wider in the forefoot, and also the toe shape is very different. So shoes designed for kids should be really very different from adult shoes. And yeah, just looking at some brands in stores, how they try to make kids' shoes look like fashionable and even pointy in some cases. I think that's terrible. So yeah, we haven't really published any papers on kids' feet data yet, but we are in discussions with several researchers to focus more on kids' feet as well.
okay, thank you. I think I'll follow up with you on that then, because I'm working on a project very related to kids last and how different their feet are, which you've noted. So I appreciate that.
Can you comment a little bit more about why measuring shoes doesn't work to do the fit? I can understand that when you have a large volume and you measure enough feet, you might be able to do that recommendation, but it seemed to kickstart the process when you have new product every year, or in weird size where you don't have a lot of volume, it might still be useful.
Measuring just a few points, like the inner length of the shoe and then the ball girth and ball width, those are just a few distinct points. And if the shoe, like even applying the right pressure is the first question. Simulating the pressure that is caused by like a foot inside the shoe, what's the right pressure there? That's like the first problem. And even if like you have the right values in those distinct points, it's only in a few points as well. And just looking at how shoes are very different in the forefoot shapes. Just the length of the shoe doesn't really tell you how what's going to be the feeling of the shoe putting on the foot. So really, by far the best or the most accurate method of measuring the fit is having scans of customers that have purchased that shoe. And yeah, in the beginning, like when a new style is introduced to the market, of course, that's a typical cold start problem with no data. However, the recommendations can already be specific for that style based on around 30 scans of shoppers, which in like with large retailers having hundreds of stores, they collect or they sell 30 pairs of a new shoe in a day. So the data that is required to be able to provide specific recommendations for that style are easy to collect.
Okay. And can you, yeah, thanks for the answer. Can you comment a little bit on ski boots? I know that the fit of like the foot in a ski boot can affect flex and things like that. Is it something you looked at?
I'm not sure I understand. What do you mean by flex? You mean in terms of the fit or?
So when you like a lot of manufacturer are say no, they have specific lasts that they use to measure the flex of a ski boot, and each manufacturer has a different shape. And if you put like a different foot shape in another manufacturer's ski boot, because like the ski boot is kind of buckling in a weird way. If you don't have a foot to support the boot, the flex can change. So I found it really interesting to see all your animation, and I was wondering how this can affect the flex of a ski boot and on snow field and all of these things that might go beyond just comfort.
Well, yeah, the flex of a ski boot is an interesting topic, and at Alpina we used a robot that was placed in a climatic chamber to simulate skiing conditions, and then we were measuring flex. But that was, that wasn't really, to look at comfort. It was just to have a standard measurement of flex, and then keeping it consistent across different styles.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think in that case, if you put a different foot shape in the boot, you would get a different flex number.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think different foot shape is not the biggest variable here. I think just the temperature is by far the biggest. We saw that there's a huge difference between like measuring it at like room temperature versus below 0 degrees. And like most customers, they try a ski boot on, of course, in a store where boots are warm and they feel soft, but then when they use them in like cold conditions, they become much harder.
Yeah. Thank you.
Maybe just a follow up on the like measuring shoes. Like this difference between the 3D foot shape and the shoe shape varies a lot based on the function of the shoe. So for ski boots, for instance, the difference between the shoe shape or boot shape and foot shape is very different compared to running shoes, for instance. And so that's another variable. But then if you have scans of shoppers who purchased a specific running shoe, they know how that shoe should fit, right? Or they buy shoes that they feel fits them best. So the information about like specific fit for running shoe is incorporated in the 3D shape of their foot. So you don't need to think about this like different expectations of fit across different types of footwear, because customers, when they purchase that shoe, they had that specific use case in mind, like running for running shoes and skiing for ski boots.
Yeah, I think that's really nice. As long as you sell a lot of shoes. Yeah. It's an interesting strategy.
For those of us who have done footwear fitting for a long time, realize that a lot of times people continue to wear the wrong size product. And so I'm curious sort of if you had a validation process for that.
So yeah, in this slide, this is a heat map of all the shoppers that purchased this Nike Vomero in size 11. And you can see quite a wide range of foot lengths, for instance, just looking at the foot length, right? So the range is close to 20 millimeters between the shortest and the longest foot, excuse me, that purchased this shoe. So obviously, shoppers on this side of this heat map, they prefer a tight fit, and these here, they prefer a loose fit. And we can see this pattern across like most types of footwear. There's some customers that prefer a bit more space, some prefer a bit less space, but the large majority is at the peak of this heat map. And that's what we consider as the optimal foot shape. And then when giving recommendations, customers see what most other shoppers that have a very similar foot shape, what size they purchased. But then there's a like certain percentage of shoppers that buy a half a size smaller or half a size larger based on their fit preference.
I'm curious what made you decide to do foot width, which is a 2D measurement, versus ball girth, which might be more indicative of foot shape in
For
terms
sure.
of the actual volume in that forefoot.
Yeah, for sure. This chart is easier to explain, just like the length and the width.
Yeah.
And we take other measurements as well. Of
In
course,
your-
the ball girth, the instep girth also is also important, right? So other measurements are taken into account for recommendations. This is just for the like explanation purposes.
Gotcha. And if you don't mind, I've got one more question.
Sure.
Specifically, I think running sort of has the spoil of riches where there is just an abundance of product, and you can keep searching until you find a footwear maker who designs shoes to your individual foot shape. And I think even like that size chart inconsistency table sort of brings home that point, looking at how varied it is across brands. But for outdoor sports where perhaps there isn't as great of a market and you don't have hundreds of shoes on a wall to pick from, what have you learned with your expertise in terms of the use of any sort of an insole or an orthotic? And maybe I'm thinking more of an insole, not something that's taking up tons of volume in the shoe, but just an insole in thinking about perhaps heel cups or instep heights to improve fit out of the box. In your opinion, does that play a role that is important and can make a difference?
Yeah, I think that depends on the type of footwear. For instance, in running shoes, supporting the arch, I think it doesn't make all sense because the arch has its function. And if you support the arch, then you reduce that function of the foot, right? Then versus types of footwear, for instance, ski boots, where the foot is static inside the ski boot, or for instance, hockey skates, providing support to the arch makes much more sense. So I think it really depends on like the use case.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Do I need to take the insoles out of my running shoes?
Well, Of course, it depends on what type of insoles you have. But definitely having like a strong arch support in running shoes, I wouldn't recommend that.
So interesting. Thank you so much. All right, if there are no further questions, I will just leave it at that. And thank you so much, Alish. This completes our webinar for December. I'll be hosting the next Core Outdoor Speaker Series webinar in late January. So look for details on that in your email after the new year. Also, CORE is proud to be the sponsor of the Banff Mountain Film Festival, and the East Kootenay screening of the World Tour is happening January 3rd and 4th at the Key City Theater in Cranbrook. So CORE will be on site there showcasing various makers and their products. If you're not already involved with that and would like to be, please reach out. All right, that's a wrap then. I'm signing off the meeting. Until next time. Thanks everybody and have happy holiday.